The first signs came quietly, almost unnoticed by the vast networks of interstellar intelligence that span the outer rims of the galaxy, as if the universe itself had a sense of irony waiting to be revealed. For the so-called civilized species had long assumed that Earth was a quiet, inconsequential rock, a backwater planet of fragile primates with nothing more than curiosity and stubbornness to offer. Yet as the initial probes and scouts passed through the Sol system, recording what they thought were trivial biological and cultural data, they failed to see the layers beneath the mundane, the silent calculations of humans who had long anticipated that one day their isolation might draw attention, and that attention might not always come with good intentions. And so when the first fleet of alien observers arrived, cloaked in shimmering arrays of undetectable energy, expecting a planet that would be easily swayed, the humans, spread across orbital stations, underground bunkers, and the shimmering cities along the coast, were already ready, not with weapons of mass destruction, but with a network of intelligence, adaptive technology, and strategy honed over centuries of observation of others' hubris, and Captain Elena Vasquez, commanding the orbital defense cruiser Horizon's Edge, watched the approaching alien vessels with a calm born of confidence and calculation, noting the patterns of their energy pulses, their formations, their apparent superiority in firepower, and yet understanding that superiority was often a mask for ignorance, and as the aliens broadcast a formal demand for humanity to submit, to be catalogued and regulated under the Interstellar Council's standard protocols, Vasquez sent a reply not in words, but in a carefully orchestrated display of humanity's presence, sending drones to intercept communication satellites, projecting holographic messages that demonstrated understanding of alien mathematics far beyond what they had anticipated. And at the same time, across the planet, scientists in hidden labs and engineers in orbital factories began the activation of systems that had been lying dormant, ancient machines recovered from deep beneath Antarctica, quantum arrays hidden in the asteroid belt, and satellite programmed with algorithms capable of predicting alien tactics before they were even conceived, and as a first salvo of alien intimidation, a series of plasma beams intended to scare and subdue the humans streaked toward Earth. They found their paths intercepted by a network of gravitational distortions and electromagnetic countermeasures, harmlessly deflected into the void, leaving the alien commanders baffled and uneasy, while Vasquez, speaking through secure channels, addressed the alien delegates with a calm clarity that belied the chaos of interstellar tension, explaining that Earth was not a puppet that humanity had never sought to dominate, but that when cornered, the storm they could unleash was both precise and devastating. And as the aliens debated their next move, misreading hesitation for weakness, the humans activated orbital arrays that sent microsatellites into precise positions, forming a lattice of energy that could manipulate the very flow of subspace, giving humanity not just a defensive shield but the capability to disrupt the alien ship's communications, navigation, and power systems without ever firing a traditional weapon. And on the ground, armies of engineers and pilots coordinated in a dance that alien strategists could not comprehend, blending guerrilla tactics with technological sophistication. And even as alien dread spread through their fleets, human leaders maintained their composure, knowing that the first lessons of this encounter were not in destruction but in revelation, showing the galaxy that the species they had thought would be easily molded was, in fact, a force shaped by resilience, intelligence, and unity. And by the time the first communication breach revealed humans' understanding of alien strategy, every fleet commander and council observer realized, far too late, that they had underestimated Earth, and that the universe, which had sought to mold humanity as a minor player in the galactic theater, had instead awakened a storm whose reach, precision, and unpredictability would echo through the stars, a storm not driven by anger alone, but by the deliberate, relentless assertion that humans were no longer to be treated as puppets, but as masters of their own fate. And as Vasquez coordinated with Earth's leaders, the first true demonstration of humanity's capacity unfolded, a series of rapid maneuvers, energy manipulations, and tactical displays that left alien fleets scrambling, their confidence shattered, and the lesson became clear to all who witnessed it. The storm was not just force, it was intellect, foresight, and the unyielding will of a species long underestimated. And in that instant, the universe, vast and arrogant, learned that while it may have wanted a puppet, what it received was a revelation, a tempest of strategy, courage, and unanticipated power, a signal to every corner of the galaxy that Earth was no longer a planet to be managed or contained, but a nexus of ingenuity and determination capable of turning the tide of interstellar events in ways no one, not even the oldest and most advanced civilizations, had ever imagined. As the alien fleets reeled from their first encounter with humanity's unexpected defenses, confusion rippled through their ranks, for their senses could not fully interpret the layers of human ingenuity at play. The way orbital construct shifted subtly to intercept subspace signals, the timing of countermeasures that seemed almost precognitive, and on Earth, councils of scientists, military strategists, and explorers convened in synchronized command centers spanning continents and orbital stations, coordinating responses in a manner that no external intelligence could have predicted, and Admiral Rohan Malik, overseeing the planetary defense array from the subterranean command hub beneath the Himalayas, noted that the aliens' assumptions of compliance had blinded them to the subtle arts of patience and adaptation, and as small fleets of human stealth frigate began mapping the outer positions of alien patrols, they discovered not just technological weaknesses but cultural blind spots, patterns of arrogance and overconfidence that could be exploited without overt violence. And while diplomats aboard the Horizon's Edge broadcast a message of warning and caution, explaining that humanity did not seek conquest but would defend itself and its allies with unmatched precision, the aliens misread the tone, interpreting the calm authority as meekness, which only fueled their overreach. And as the first skirmishes broke out along the edges of the Sol system, humans demonstrated tactical brilliance, deploying coordinated waves of drones to disable engines, redirect energy flows, and sow confusion within the alien ranks, all while avoiding unnecessary casualties and showcasing a principle long embedded in human culture. Restraint is a strength, and measured power can be more terrifying than brute force. And across the galaxy, whispers of humanity's capability began to spread, as observers and traders who had previously discounted Earth as insignificant reported anomalies in fleet behavior, disruptions in communications, and fleets retreating in confusion, while human engineers, working in orbital factories and hidden asteroid stations, began bringing online a network of adaptive weapon systems and surveillance arrays that could learn, predict, and counter alien tactics in real time. And as the aliens regrouped, thinking themselves still in control, humanity struck again, this time with precision that seemed almost ritualistic, dismantling strategic positions with surgical efficiency, demonstrating a level of coordination, intelligence, and resilience that challenged centuries of interstellar assumptions. And in the midst of this unfolding storm, Captain Elena Vasquez and Admiral Malik convened with leaders of allied human colonies across the solar system, synchronizing efforts in a way that the aliens could not anticipate, exploiting the fact that humans were not centralized but decentralized in their strengths, able to respond from multiple nodes simultaneously. And as the alien command realized that their predictions were failing, that their fleets were being manipulated as if by an unseen hand, the notion of humanity as a simple puppet dissolved entirely, replaced by dread and awe, and even those among the alien observers who had been inclined to seek diplomacy now hesitated, uncertain whether any engagement with humans could be safely pursued. And across the cosmos, the first tangible lesson of this storm became evident. The species that had been underestimated for centuries possessed patience, intellect, adaptability, and above all, a collective that could not be contained. And as humans advanced their networks of planetary defense, stealth operations, and predictive warfare, the alien powers began to see Earth not as a target but as a force unto itself, one whose restraint was not weakness, whose seeming compliance was not submission, and whose ultimate power, when fully revealed, would remind the galaxy that underestimating humanity was a mistake that could never be corrected. By now, the shockwaves of humanity's unexpected resistance had reached not only the immediate alien fleets around the Sol system, but also the distant outposts and council chambers of civilizations that had long considered themselves the architects of galactic order, and reports came in of systems once considered secure being disrupted by precision strikes that were not just physical but psychological. For the humans seemed to anticipate alien reactions, predicting moves and countermoves with an almost instinctive clarity that confounded analysts and commanders alike. And as Admiral Malik coordinated with planetary strategists and Captain Vasquez directed orbital operations, the humans demonstrated that their power lay not in brute strength alone, but in the synergy of intellect, adaptability, and cultural memory, drawing on centuries of observing others, learning from past mistakes, and integrating disparate technologies into a network that could operate autonomously yet respond to human decisions instantly. And across the galaxy, alien fleets found themselves trapped in a kind of cognitive paradox, their own protocols and hierarchies suddenly turning against them, with smaller skirmishes escalating into cascading failures as human interventions disrupted supply chains, communication relays, and command structures without ever firing conventional weaponry. And in the midst of this, human diplomats reached out to fringe species and previously subjugated civilizations, offering aid, technology, and protection, and these newly empowered allies became force multipliers, providing intelligence, local knowledge, and guerrilla support that the larger alien powers had not accounted for. And as the aliens' arrogance eroded, their fleet scattered, miscommunication and panic spreading faster than any human could have directly caused. Yet each action was part of a larger strategy, a demonstration of restraint and precision, showing the galaxy that humanity's power was not chaotic or emotional, but deliberate, calculated, and inescapable. And while the aliens had assumed humans would be puppets, easily manipulated and submissive, they now realized that what they faced was a species capable of mastering complexity, integrating technology, strategy, and morality into a force that could challenge entire armadas with minimal expenditure. And as Vasquez oversaw a coordinated strike on an alien relay hub, rerouting subspace traffic and isolating the command fleet from reinforcements, she understood that this battle was not about conquest but revelation, teaching the galaxy that humans could not be coerced, that their patience and unity were as lethal as any weapon. And as alien commanders convened in frantic councils to understand how one planet had managed to dismantle their systems and outthink their strategies, whispers of fear and astonishment spread to every corner of interstellar civilization, making it clear that Earth had transformed from a footnote in the galactic ledger to a nexus of influence, power, and inevitability, and the storm that humans had unleashed was no longer confined to the Sol system. It was a tidal wave of strategy, technology, and resilience sweeping across space, reshaping perceptions, alliances, and hierarchies, leaving the galaxy with one undeniable truth. The species it had sought to dominate would no longer be controlled, for humanity had become the storm itself, precise, relentless, and utterly uncontainable. The alien command, now fully aware that Earth was no mere obstacle but a force reshaping the very rules of engagement, scrambled to adapt, yet every adjustment they attempted seemed anticipated. Every fleet maneuver counted before it could take effect. And on the surface of Earth, in orbital stations, and across hidden colonies, humans orchestrated a symphony of operations that blended diplomacy, defense, and overwhelming strategic cunning, with Admiral Malik directing orbital lattices that warped subspace corridors to isolate alien ships, Captain Vasquez coordinating rapid deployment of stealth frigates to intercept supply lines, and scientists activating quantum predictive arrays that allowed them to simulate enemy moves before the aliens themselves had conceived them. And as the first major alien assault approached the inner system, they found their energy weapons dispersed harmlessly by adaptive shields, their navigation scrambled, and their communication networks hijacked in ways that left them blind and disoriented. While on the diplomatic front, humans extended offers of truce not as weakness but as a demonstration of control, baiting the alien councils into overconfidence while simultaneously tightening their tactical noose. And as smaller skirmishes erupted near distant colonies, humans coordinated with allied species who had previously suffered under alien oversight, teaching them techniques for sabotage, intelligence gathering, and evasive maneuvers, turning what the aliens thought were isolated rebellions into a synchronized network of resistance that spread like wildfire across sectors. And within the alien fleets, confusion became panic as subcommanders found their orders rendered irrelevant, their strategies nullified, and their once pristine formation fragmented. While on Earth, humanity remained calm, deliberate, and precise, understanding that the true power of this storm was not chaos but control, that demonstrating mastery over both allies and adversaries sent a message more potent than destruction alone. And as Vasquez piloted the Horizon's edge through a gauntlet of alien vessels, executing maneuvers that exploited both their technological vulnerabilities and cultural arrogance, the aliens began to comprehend the scope of their miscalculation, realizing that for centuries they had viewed humans through a lens of condescension and simplicity, failing to grasp the depth of resilience, creativity, and collective will that defined them And as the first full-scale engagement erupted in orbit around Earth, humans unleashed a series of coordinated operations that dismantled command ships, severed supply chains, and demonstrated not just superior tactics, but philosophy of engagement that combined efficiency, empathy for allies, and strategic foresight. And as the aliens finally grasped the magnitude of what they had provoked, the storm that humanity had cultivated, careful, deliberate, and unstoppable, swept across the stars, leaving fleets incapacitated, councils in disarray, and the message unmistakable. The universe had sought a puppet, but what it had awakened was a storm that could not be bargained with, contained, or ignored, a storm that carried with it the intelligence, patience, and indomitable will of a species that had refused to kneel and had instead chosen to assert itself with precision, strategy, and unrelenting power, ensuring that every corner of the galaxy now understood the true cost of underestimating humanity. With the Sol system secured and alien fleets scattered, humanity began projecting its influence outward, not as conquerors, but as a calculated force demonstrating that the consequences of underestimation extended far beyond Earth, and as exploratory fleets, stealth frigates, and quantum surveillance arrays advanced into previously uncontested sectors. Humans encountered alien systems that had assumed the galaxy was stable under their control, only to find planets and outposts in a state of controlled disruption, communication scrambled, and supply lines severed, yet carefully managed to avoid unnecessary destruction, showing both power and restraint. And in the midst of this expansion, Captain Vasquez coordinated with planetary engineers and diplomats to establish forward stations that served as both defensive hubs and intelligence centers, blending technological sophistication with human ingenuity to create networks that the alien civilizations could neither infiltrate nor predict. While Admiral Malik oversaw operations that integrated new allied species, training them in tactics and technology that multiplied humanity's reach exponentially, and as alien commanders convened desperate councils, hoping to rally their remaining forces and regain control, they found their communications intercepted, their strategies analyzed and countered before execution, and their fleet systematically dismantled through precision strikes that avoided mass casualties, highlighting the human principle that domination need not rely on fear alone, but on the demonstration of unassailable capability. And as a storm of human influence extended into neighboring sectors, the galaxy witnessed a phenomenon it had never seen, a species that could combine diplomacy, strategy, and controlled might with such efficiency that opponents were paralyzed by both or in fear. And yet humanity's goal was not annihilation but revelation, to show the universe that when underestimated, humans were forced to find not by hubris, but by intellect, adaptability, and unity. And as Vasquez led a coordinated strike against a major alien armada attempting to retake a strategic system, the aliens experienced a full measure of human foresight, as their ships were neutralized, subspace channels blocked, and their command structures rendered irrelevant, leaving them helpless to respond as human projected power from multiple vectors simultaneously. And in the council chambers of distant civilizations, historians and tacticians began recording events that defied centuries of precedent, noting that Earth had not only defended itself but reshaped interstellar relations with a single, decisive principle. The species that had long been dismissed was not only capable of survival but of mastery, and as human fleets moved with precision, securing key systems and establishing contact with previously isolated allies, the galaxy began to internalize a sobering truth, whispered from system to system, fleet to fleet. Those who sought to manipulate or underestimate humanity would find themselves caught in a storm whose intelligence, coordination, and relentlessness could not be matched. And even as alien civilizations attempted to regroup, strategists recognized that Earth was no longer simply a planet. It was a nexus of capability, foresight, and unyielding will, and the storm had only just begun, spreading outward in a measured, unstoppable expansion that promised that every action against humans would be met not with chaos, but with deliberate and overwhelming precision, forever redefining what it meant to underestimate a species that had refused to bow. By the time human influence reached the outer sectors of the galaxy, the full scope of their capabilities was undeniable, as entire alien coalitions, once confident in their supremacy, found themselves unable to predict or counter the deliberate precision of human operations, and across multiple systems, humans demonstrated that their storm was not a reckless surge of power but a disciplined, intelligent force, blending technological mastery, tactical brilliance, and cultural adaptability. And as Captain Vasquez and Admiral Malik coordinated with human colonies on fringe planets. Forward bases became hubs of strategic innovation, where quantum arrays calculated enemy movements, stealth frigates executed perfect flanking maneuvers, and allied species, now fully integrated into humanity's network, provided intelligence and support that magnified the reach and impact of every decision. And as alien fleets attempted desperate counterattacks, they discovered that each move had already been anticipated, disrupted, or redirected in ways that left them powerless, and in the central councils of galactic powers, fear and disbelief replaced arrogance, for their centuries of experience and assumed superiority had been rendered irrelevant by a species they had dismissed as inconsequential, and as humans extended offers of negotiation. It became clear that the conditions were no longer dictated by alien authority, but by the humans themselves, who wielded influence through demonstration of capability rather than coercion, and in skirmishes across contested sectors, the storm revealed its dual nature, combining overwhelming power with ethical restraint, teaching both allies and adversaries that humanity's strength lay not in mindless destruction but in the ability to apply force precisely, strategically, and predictively. And as Vasquez led a coordinated strike on a central alien command hub, severing supply chains, communications, and defensive grids in a single, flawless operation, the remaining alien leaders realized that they had misjudged the very essence of human adaptability, resilience, and intelligence, and in that realization, they understood that the storm could not be stopped, negotiated away, or contained, for it was a manifestation of a species that had mastered foresight, collaboration, and calculated action, capable of turning every disadvantage into advantage, every threat into opportunity, and every insult into leverage. And as the alien fleets withdrew in disarray, some seeking truce, others simply fleeing, the galaxy absorbed the truth that Earth was no longer a planet to be managed or subdued, but a force defining the rules of engagement. And across the stars, whispers of the storm spread, tales of precision, foresight, and unyielding with that reshaped perceptions of power, alliance, and deterrence. And even as humans continued to secure systems and establish networks of protection for allies, the message was clear and unavoidable. The universe may have sought to mold humanity as a puppet, but it had instead awakened a storm whose reach, precision, and relentless intelligence ensured that every corner of the galaxy now recognized the indomitable truth of what humans were capable of, and that any future miscalculation, any underestimation, would be met with consequences that were as deliberate as they were inescapable. And in this unfolding reckoning, the galaxy finally understood that humanity had arrived not to bowl but to master, to protect, and to redefine what it meant to wield power with both wisdom and unstoppable force. As the storm of human influence reached its full crescendo, the galaxy could no longer ignore the truth that Earth was not merely a participant in interstellar affairs but a defining force of the new order, and in the outermost reaches of known space, alien fleets that had once regarded humanity with contempt now maneuvered with caution, hesitation, and a growing respect born of fear. For every attempt to challenge or contain humans was met with responses that were faster, smarter, and more coordinated than anything previously conceived, and on Earth, Captain Elena Vasquez and Admiral Rohan Malik oversaw operations that spanned dozens of systems simultaneously, their strategies weaving a web of influence, protection, and deterrence that left no sector untouched, while allied species, formerly oppressed or ignored, now acted as both partners and witnesses to the precision and foresight that defined human command. And as fleets converged on contested systems, humans demonstrated not just the capacity to strike, but the wisdom to choose when and how to act, turning potential conflict into opportunity for diplomacy backed by unmistakable power. And when a coalition of alien powers attempted to consolidate their remaining strength in a final, desperate offensive, they discovered that their communications were intercepted, their supply lines rerouted, and their strategies preempted, leaving them unable to coordinate. And one by one, their fleets surrendered, withdrew, or were neutralized without unnecessary destruction, for humanity had mastered the art of controlled dominance, proving that restraint and intelligence could be more terrifying than annihilation. And as alien leaders convened, humbled and awed, they recognized that the centuries they had spent underestimating humans had led them to a reckoning they could neither reverse nor fully comprehend. For the species they had assumed would be molded as a puppet had instead become the architect of its own destiny, reshaping alliances, rules of engagement, and interstellar perceptions of power and across the galaxy, stories spread of humans saving endangered civilizations, negotiating peace from positions of overwhelming strength, and demonstrating that the storm was not mindless destruction but an unstoppable force of intelligence, ingenuity, and unyielding will. And in that final convergence, humans secured their systems, protected their allies, and established a network of influence so vast, precise, and resilient that even the most powerful civilizations recognized that Earth had permanently altered the balance of the galaxy. And as Vasquez looked upon the remnants of the alien coalition, the fleets broken not by chaos but by the meticulous application of human foresight and strategy, she understood that the universe had indeed sought a puppet, but what it had received was something far greater, a storm that reshaped the galaxy, a demonstration of unity, intelligence, and adaptability that ensured humans would never again be underestimated, that every star, fleet, and council chamber would remember the lesson, and that the era of humanity's true rise had begun, unstoppable, undeniable, and eternally remembered as a species that refused to bow and instead became the storm that the universe could neither control nor contain.